Hello, fellow book people, also fellow comic book people. Today I'm reviewing Gideon Falls Volume 1. It's a 2018 Image Comics collection of the first 6 issues of Gideon Falls. Written by Jeff Lemire, drawn artist by Andrea Sorrentino. Make sure I get my names right here. I should put my notes, as copious as they are, up here. It's a horror comic where it follows 2 stories. One is of a fellow named Norton, who was kind of discovered as a very young child with like amnesia, and is now as a full-grown man, suffers from mental illness, which is being treated by Dr. Wu. She's treating him and kind of wondering whether, people are kind of questioning whether she should have actually let him out of the institution he was confined to because of apparently harm to himself, harm to others. When we meet him, and indeed for the entire book, he's always in a mask here. I'm going to do that, but that's the very opening page, and there's Norton, and indeed he's upside down. So we do what all comic book readers do in situations like this: is we flip it up over, and there's Norton, who's slightly a scary fellow in those, and especially all these kind of dark, murky tones, which I'll get to later. So that's the first thing, and he's obsessed with garbage, and he picks up little pieces of garbage and he puts them in little jars and stuff like that. The other storyline we follow is Father Fred, who has come to the titular little town of Gideon Falls, and is replacing Father Tom, who seems to have died under mysterious circumstances. The woman that he meets there at the beginning doesn't want to. It's like it's too raw or whatever, and she doesn't want to talk about it. And so the story, it's called Gideon Falls, but it all centers around this thing of the Black Barn, and this mysterious structure which seems to not really exist, but sort of suddenly will show up at certain points in the story. Father Tom, I don't think it's a spoiler to say he suddenly shows up again unexpectedly, and stuff like that. So there's a murder. Father Fred gets pulled in and gets questioned by the sheriff, a woman named Sheriff Miller, and he's pointed to Doc Sutton, who tells him about the secret society of people who are trying to fight the Black Barn, and it seems to have, Doc Sutton's son seems to have been disappeared by this at some point in the past. So that's sort of based. That's the general kind of dark, violent story. And there's a lot of violence in here. Everything is, as I said, the art style. I think one of the reasons why, because I did not really actually get along with this book, but I thought it was actually worth talking about why I didn't get along with this thing, because I often talk about how I go for a very kind of a clean, kind of a much more cartoony style. And this book is, obviously this is a guy, Andrea Sorrentino is somebody he's got great chops, but it's not really a style that I get along with. It's all very detailed. It's photorealistic, in that sense. There's no exaggerations. You can see this going from the page to actually being filmed quite easily. You wouldn't have to, massive prosthetics. This is just the pictures. I would think that actually in a movie setting, this might actually, I would get past that kind of artistic style, because everything is murky. I really don't get any sense of kind of like of people's faces, like their expressions. Everything's very muted. The old woman's face there. It all feels like it's kind of shot through this kind of hazy filter, which I guess is a part of the style and a part of like we're creating the mood and the atmosphere. But I find it very alienating. But also take a look at pages like that, of the kind of the splintered pages, looking at Doc Sutton's crazy wall. That giving you that idea of, okay, here are all the overwhelming, like, minuscule details, and like, how maybe this is like, maybe this guy isn't all there, maybe this is all crazy talk and all stuff like that. So, it's like I give props to like, to the art style, even though it's not really my art style. But I thought that was a thing worthy saying of like, I can see it working, especially for a horror comic. I just didn't find it I just don't find that art style very involving myself. And, that's a good tip to have for when you're talking to someone. Oh, that's the guy who didn't like Andrea Sorrentino's work, or, it didn't really resonate with him. Like, I don't think he's a hack or anything. I think it's a good art style, but it's just, it doesn't resonate with me, which is, it's funny. Like, you can have a great writer in I really find, newsflash, that with comics, you've got to have that marriage of great writing and great art. And if you only have one of those, the book falls like a dud. And so I can be very shallow if, like, I've gone into a comic book store, or in this case to a library, and I kind of flip through a book and I go, oh, I don't like that art style, and I just put it back down again, because I know that that's half of the work, and then I'm probably not gonna go. But for some reason, I did pick this up. I thought, oh, okay, Canadian content on the Jeff Lemire side. So I did read the story, and I kind of have to say, I wasn't like, this is the tough thing about I'm basically kind of reviewing like the first chapter of a novel here, because it's like just the first 6 episodes. God knows how long this will go for. But, so this is like the opening chapter. We're setting things up in a way. And it's really setting up to be a supernatural mystery where it's like supernatural and mystery together. It's sort of like, well, then it's like, it's a mystery without any rules, in a way like that. Like, anybody can become the murderer, and, it could be, I find it's slack in the tension there, because it could be anyone. I mean, and which isn't to say, I mean, and that's because it's the mystery part of it they're leaning on at the moment. Whereas if it's kind of supernatural and it's like, yeah, you know what, anyone can kill, anyone can be violent. And you kind of tap into that kind of concern and a kind of underlying view of human nature. I can see that being, but when it's in a mystery setting, I found that kind of, uninvolving. And to be honest, as I was reading the book, I was thinking, oh, I can sort of see connections there. And once we get to the end of this section and we get kind of a reveal of, oh, this is what's happening, I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's because it's all magic, and yeah, big deal. So yeah, I have to say, I'm probably not going to go on with the Gideon Falls series, but hopefully I've given you a idea of, like, the art in there. And then it's Jeff Lemire, known for Essex County, his work on, like, Old Man Logan, which is what ended up getting kind of spun off into the latest Wolverine, X-Men Wolverine movie, which was Logan, which I really enjoyed that, which is, I mean, relation between comics and the movies, they took the inspiration of Old Man Logan and they kind of spun it into a movie and made it of its own thing. But yes, so that's my thoughts on Gideon Falls as it is. But I figured, I like to review stuff and I like to think about stuff. This is, I was kind of like, oh, I feel so blah about this. Maybe I should I'll just kind of take it back to the library. I got the reminder, take me back. But I was like, no, it's good. It's good to say, hey, this is the sort of stuff I don't like, or, that just doesn't resonate with me. I think that's a worthy addition to my canon of reviews. So yes, with that said, more videos later.